Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time I'm reviewing a 9th Doctor story, and it is the very first story of the revived series. It's Rose. It's funny to think that it's now 18 years, on Sunday coming up, since Doctor Who came back to our screens. Funny to think the hiatus of 16 years is now less than the time that the revived series has been back on, and we can't really call it new series anymore, it must be revived series. Although how they're going to work it for the stuff coming up, we'll need to wait and see. But yes, 26th of March 2005, Saturday night, about 7 o'clock, I'm sitting down to watch my favourite show come back live on television. First time I've watched a live Doctor Who since the TV movie 9 years before. And there's a lot of fond memories of this story, but there's also quite a few little niggly things that don't quite work 18 years down the line. And we'll get into the ins and outs of that in this review. So let's start off with a quick synopsis of the plot. So, a girl from a South London estate called Rose Tyler goes to her work called Hendrix. She goes through a shift like a normal day. We see the montage of her daily routine, and at the end of the night she's asked to take the lottery money down to the chief electrician, Wilson, who she can't seem to get to open his office door. She then starts looking around the basement area of Hendrix to see if she can find him, and goes into a room full of shop window dummies. These dummies start to come alive and are about to do something nasty to her in a kind of let's kill her way before we go any further, guys. And then the Doctor comes and grabs her hand and takes her away, and the escape, and the Doctor blows up the building. And then Rose goes home with no job. The next day, Rose gets up, trying to find a job for herself, and she took a dummy hand with her, a mannequin hand with her, when she ran away from the shop when the Doctor told her to run for her life when she was escaping Hendrix. And this hand is starting to cause problems and starting to become alive, and the Doctor tracks the living plastic to her. And then after a little bit of a ruckus with the hand, Rose decides to follow the Doctor because she wants to know what's happening, because he just is about to swanning off, as he quotes it, and ends up having a conversation with Rose. She joins him in a conversation as he's walking back to the TARDIS. He then disappears, and Rose starts doing some searching via Mickey's internet connection. That's an interesting point of conversation, that she has to go to her boyfriend's house to get the internet because it's still such a big thing at that point. It's amazing how we think now that 18 years down the line the internet's so ubiquitous, but even then it was still a little bit of a expensive luxury to some people. The fact that she finds out about the Doctor, finds out this conspiracy theorist called Clyde, who she goes to meet, with Mickey taking her there. Mickey gets taken over by a wheelie bin and gets converted to plastic, while Rose is speaking to Clive, and Clive's talking about all the conspiracy theories about the Doctor and all the evidence he has about what he thinks the Doctor is and who he thinks the Doctor is, and he thinks that the Doctor is dangerous. Mickey and Rose go for something to eat. Mickey starts trying to interrogate Rose about the Doctor. Obviously it's not Mickey at this point, it's a kind of mannequin version, it's an Auton version. The Doctor interferes, manages to get Rose away from the danger, and it's the first time that Rose goes into the TARDIS as the escape. There's a bit more discussion about what the Nestines are, a bit more about the TARDIS and the Doctor, and lots of planets have a north, and all the usual bits and pieces you have in this episode, all these famous quotes. It then gets to the stage that Rose and the Doctor manage to find the hideout of the Nestine consciousness. The Doctor wants to try and talk it to leave Earth, but they don't trust him because they find the anti-plastic solution that the Doctor had on him, and then get more freaked out when they find the TARDIS. They then start their plans to turn everything plastic into living, working plastic, to start killing people, and there's an ambush of shop window dummies in a shopping arcade, which also sees Rose's mum, Jackie, cop it as well. However, Clive is out shopping with his son and wife, and Clive gets killed by the shop window dummy. Rose manages to save the day, manages to save the Doctor, who's been restrained by the two Autons. One of the Autons holds the anti-plastic, and Rose manages to knock it out of the hand and go into the Nestine consciousness, as in a big vat of goo, plasticky goo, down below. kills off the Nestine consciousness, and all the mannequins and that collapse because they've got no more control. We then have the situation where we got Rose getting taken back to the estate, Powell estate, and invited to join the Doctor. Rose initially declined because she wanted to look after Mickey, who she found in Nestine Consciousness HQ, the regional Mickey, and he's scared for his life. The Doctor says he can travel through time and through space. Rose declines, but when he comes back, he disappears and comes back, and says, yeah, he also travels in time, and Rose is off with him. So that's basically your plot line. I mean, you probably know the plot line anyway, but that's my description of it. In regards to main characters, they keep it rather tight. There's 7 main credited characters here, and there's also maybe only 5 main people in here. So we have, of course, Eccles himself, Christopher Eccleston. To have an introduction of this for a Doctor, it's certainly one of the best introductions I've seen of a Doctor since Spearhead from Space. In fact, it probably is one of the best introductions I've seen of a Doctor since Spearhead from Space. I think possibly because it's a reset, you're trying to establish the basics, and because the plot it's a little light, but it's still enjoyable and fun to watch, and it still packs a lot in. To set up the character as a likeable, slight doofus with some of his social awkwardness, and then obviously the fact that there's a lot more intelligence and a deeper underlying undercurrent there of the Ninth Doctor. It's an interesting combination of the two. And Eccleston, everything he does in the series that he's in, he does not put a foot wrong. He nails everything. Dalek, I think, is one of the best examples of the way the character he's able to flip on a coin in regards to the way his character works. This one is a bit more, it's not scattergun, but there's a bit of, he goes 1 minute from being very happy-go-lucky to the next minute being very serious, and in between just holding a lot of bad feelings. At this point we don't know why the bad feelings there, but we can tell he's a little hurt. Eccleston just plays it absolutely fantastically. He draws you in from the beginning, and one personal memory I've got of this is we as a family watched it, the 4 of us, at the time, and it's still one of the quotes that I remember very fondly my father sniggering at, which is the bit where when he gets Rose out of the building at Henrik's, he turns around and tells her, gets her out the fire escape and closes the door, and then opens the door again and says, "Oh, by the way, what's your name?" And Rose says, "Rose." And he says, "Nice to meet you, Rose. Run for your life," with his detonator on him, and closing the door. And my dad smirked at that. And he has an affinity for Eccleston. He said himself he loves Eccleston, and that's one of the key reasons, that kind of mix between the comedic side but the very serious side, and the way that Eccleston's been able to put it together. And I think he is one of the strongest actors we've had as Doctor Who. Don't get me wrong, all the actors who play the Doctor bring something to the role and definitely are right to play the Doctor, but Eccleston's probably one of the ones that is able to get all the great elements you have of the classic series with the serious side of the Doctor, bring in the modern elements of the way the format is and the way the Doctor should be acting in such a quicker time frame, and also brings in a new nuance because he's different. His costume is different. His mannerisms are a little different. He's northern sounding. It's only the second time, remember, we've had a different accent from the usual RP that we're used to in this classic series at this point. This is only the second time we've had a non-RP Doctor. Of course, that trend kind of buckles from then on in, but most of the Doctors going forward have some sort of accent on them, and Eccleston's the first one to establish that trend. And I genuinely think that a story like Rose, which is a great introduction to the series for new fans, that brought a lot of people on, even though there's a lot of Tenantistas out there who like David Tennant, most of them would have seen a few Eccleston stories. I'm absolutely certain of that. And if they tuned in for the very first one, Rose, I think they would have been hooked. And Eccleston's the one that sells it for me. We then have Billie Piper playing Rose Tyler. Now, Billie Piper at this point had a kind of reputation of being she was a pop singer, trying to be an actress. She didn't have anything really of serious note up to this point. Rose is the first time we actually see her embody a role 100%. There's not a scene here really where I think she's not nailing it. She plays a teenage role, the teenager 19-year-old Rose, very well. I think the whole way that she plays it is really great. I prefer Rose of Series 1 to Series 2. I have mentioned that already. And the reason is because she plays it more real here in this series. And the way of establishing Rose's background and character and everything else comes from this first episode, named for her, named after her. She is the reason for the name of the story. I like this story for the two dynamics between Rose Tyler and the Doctor particularly. I think it really works, and they bounce off each other. The rapport is there. They have that energy between them. That relationship is really clear, that they bounce off each other. And the fact that Rose is really your window into this fascinating world in a kind of modern way, as it would have been at the time. Of course, now we'll look at it and going, that's a bit old-fashioned, but at the time that was modern. What you were seeing on screen was a kind of modern interpretation of how the world was looking at that point. But Billie Piper plays it solidly. I don't think she puts too much of a foot wrong. I mean, there's a couple of clunky dialogue elements in here, but do you know what? Series 1 is very consistent in its story quality, regardless of who's writing it, and this is the template for it. Rose, I think, is a great character overall. Billie Piper plays it very well, and certainly is one to rely on as your audience gateway into the world of Doctor Who, and Billie Piper does a great job in doing that. We then have Camille Coduri playing Jackie Tyler. Busybody Mum. There isn't too much for Jackie in this one. She's just kind of like the identification figure for Rose to build up a family. I mean, I love the bit where the Doctor first comes into Rose's flat and Jackie's just had a shower and she says, "Oh, there's a strange man in my room. Anything could happen." The Doctor's going, "No," and just walks out. That sort of comedy element is there and she works it well. However, there's not much to Jackie here, and actually, even though what's written is great, you don't really get much of Jackie in this one, and it's really later stories that you see what the character Jackie is. The Father's Day is probably one of the best stories for Jackie Tyler, because it shows the dynamic and why she comes across as such a working class mum, I suppose is the way, watching trashy TV and all that, and the way it's put across, this kind of youngish mum that's had Rose obviously pretty early in her life, and this now 40-something mum trying to find her way, but kind of laying about a little bit. It's more a stereotypical start to the character. You see more of the nuances behind what makes Jackie tick and why she cares so much for Rose in later stories. Father's Day is the best example of how you establish the character of Jackie and why she is, as I mentioned. But here, great start for Camille Coduri, and I like the way it's played. We then have Noel Clarke plays Nick Mickey Smith. I don't know if it's the way it's written or the way it's come across, the way he's played it. It kind of doesn't work 100%. I got that feeling at the time. I wasn't quite enamoured with Mickey, the way Mickey is put across. It might be partly writing. It might be just a case of trying to set up a unit and a nucleus that Rose has. She has a boyfriend who seems a bit of a hypochondriac and a bit overreactive and doesn't seem to have much of substance to him. He's a bit weak, I think, in that. I mean, Noel Clarke plays it okay, but he doesn't get much to do, and this is probably where Mickey's the weak part of this story, because he's not really there, really. It's kind of, he's there. I mean, the bit in the car where he's sitting there trying to look like a tough man because he's worried about Rose going to speak to Clyde, who seems like one of these nutcase conspiracy theorists. That whole bit of him sitting there in the car waiting for Rose and just making faces when people are coming out for putting the bin out and putting a wheelie bin out and things like that, it doesn't work. And of course you've got the silly scene with the wheelie bin, which we'll come to in a minute, because there's a good few elements of that. But I think Noel Clarke works better when he's a monster, when he's the autoed version of Mickey. It seems to work better than the character Mickey that we've got, that we see in later stories. Here, Mickey is very basic in the character. Noel Clarke does an okay job, but there's not much to him. We then have Mark Benton playing Clive. I like the way it's played. This kind of nerdy geek who's done a lot of research into the Doctor and developed a lot of research into the Doctor, and I like the way that Mark Benton plays him. You might think he's a bit of a crank, as a phrase will come out, but a bit in reviews. You may think he's a bit of a nut job, but to be fair, I think he's actually, a bit worried, a bit scared. He's trying to protect the world. He is worried about the Doctor, and it actually is quite sad when he gets shot by the Auton. And overall, I think Mark Benton plays the role very well, and it is certainly worth watching his performance. Let's have a look at some of the good bits of the story. There's a few. I mean, I've mentioned Run for Your Life, which is one of my favourite quotes. It is one of my favourite scenes. You've got so many ways of it building up. You've got the situation of this normal girl going through the shop, going to this odd situation. The smile I had in my face when you saw the Autons move for the first time was really nice. The domestic side that they have in here, about Mickey trying to get Rose to go to the pub, and the compensation bit that Jackie was talking about with Rose. They set up the kind of life that Rose has and makes you think, well, I now know why Rose wants to find something different, because it's quite drudgery. It's boring. She wants other ambitions elsewhere. So in that respect, it does establish why Rose wants to be travelling through time and space with this strange alien that she's met. I think it's quite interesting. I think, though, the idea of the Destines coming back was a nice idea, because it helps put this... that's the thing with Spearhead from Space. It's the first one really where you put the ordinary in and makes it extraordinary. I mean, mannequin dolls. You don't expect mannequin dolls to come to life and start dislocating their hand and shooting you. And that's what you get here is the Autons doing that, and the whole Nestine consciousness in the background to it. The way the Autons are used here are of course, budgetary-wise, probably sparingly, but they're used as the scary monster of the week, but they're used in such a way that helps establish the raison d'etre of what the Doctor does, why he does it, why he wants to save the Earth. You get the first hints of the Time War. Just the whole plotting is really set up for the rest of the series. But by the end, you have a very good sense of who the Doctor is. You have a very good sense of who Rose is, and you have a very good sense about the reasons why Rose is leaving. And that's what you want. If you want a starting episode, you want to have all the elements of what would come with Doctor Who. You get introduction to the TARDIS. You get the fact it can move through time, through space. You get the time element next time in the end of the world, and then you get the Unquiet Dead after that. So you get all the elements of Doctor Who being reintroduced over 3 or 4 episodes, but this one had to be a hook for everybody, to hook everybody in. And I think it works quite well for that, and I think the way it's written works quite well. And there are good scenes in here, as I've mentioned, but it's an interesting plotting, I think. 2 bits that are a little clunky. The wheelie bin scene with Mickey. It's basic CGI, and the whole thing about Mickey's hand getting stuck in the wheelie bin then gobbling him up effectively and burping at the end, that's silly, that's childish, and it doesn't really work. Looking at it 18 years later, it was charming at the time, but it doesn't really work now, and it is a downer. The other bit is the slightly muddled scripting near the end about the fact that she's got no job, no life, and all that, and the fact that she's despairing when the Autons are starting to do their attack, and then she breaks the chain from the wall and swings around and knocks the Autons off, and she talks about having 7th grade, year 7 gymnastics. She got the bronze. That little bit there is just a written plot contrivance. She could have done other things. She didn't necessarily just swing around like that. She didn't need that psyching up to do it. She could have just got on with it, and it would have made more sense to me than just explaining the reasons behind it. That bit is clunky to me as well, but the rest of the script is pretty well paced. Direction wise, it's standard Doctor Who fare, I think. There's not much massively major shots. It's very set shots, and the way it's screened, it is lovely. The shots where the Doctor's trying to figure out where the error is for where the Auton's transmitter is, and that whole London Eye behind him when he's trying to figure out what's happening, and Rose trying to point him to the fact that London Eye is probably the transmitter. That shot's brilliant. The montage at the beginning, that works okay, about Rose's drudgery of the day. That's okay. There isn't really much action or big shots here. It's very standard filming. It's very much what you would get in the end of the classic series. And I think that's possibly why it's interesting to me the way it's filmed, because it feels like a continuation of 1989, because Rose is effectively the progression of Ace, the character of Ace, the kind of council estate sort of character. All right, she doesn't blow things up and she isn't completely streetwise, but Rose is like a development for the way the emotions work that Ace had. And Keith Boat just has this script, the standard script. He does standard work with it. It works well enough for it, but it's not amazing. There's not an amazing shot in it that really makes it brilliant. There's not a shot in it that makes me think, oh my god, what you doing? Like Tooth and Claw, with all the faux Japanese martial arts fighting bit with the monks at the beginning. There's none of that. There's nothing like that in here that's this amazing shot or amazing footage. It's very standard fare, and I think for this story you need that. You don't want anything big and flashy. You want the story to make the difference. And Russell T Davies has started writing the story to develop this narrative, to build up the characters, to introduce who the Doctor is and give some hints about what's happening. The Doctor talked about the fact he couldn't save the Nestine Consciousness home planet as part of the Time War, as we now know. The whole situation with Rose going from this mundane life to finding something fantastical and wanting to eventually join the Doctor. Mickey, less we say about Mickey the better. Jackie and the setup of Jackie being there as the worried mother. She gets a bit more to do when Rose returns in Aliens to London World War III later in the series. But the story is a setup. It's not supposed to be hard-hitting. It is supposed to be fluffy and light. And it does start, middle, end, and flows okay. The ending is slightly contrite. But remember, this is the first time a 45-minute single episode has been done in Doctor Who. So there is going to be the format that Russell T Davies tries to create here is going to need some tweaks and going to work things through. But overall, I quite like this story. I think it's a nice little romp. It's enjoyable enough. It has an A to B in it. The scripting's solid. The direction's okay. The characterizations are solid most of the time. I think the kind of iffy elements kind of bring it down from a 4.5 TARDIS's story. I think it is slightly better than the 3.5, so I've actually plumped for 4 TARDISes out of 5. Okay, let's see how that story stacks up with the rest of the Christopher Eccleston era, and also how it stacks up with the rest of the stories I've reviewed so far from the television series. So, the Christopher Eccleston era is more than halfway done now. Rose sits in with the empty child the Doctor dances, Father's Day and the end of the world with 4 TARDISes out of 5. The long game is at the bottom with 3 TARDISes out of 5. I have a funny feeling that may not be joined by any other story. And then we have Dalek at the top with 4.5 TARDISes out of 5. Of course, the 2 bottom stories I've reviewed so far, Timelash and Sleep No More. And at the top, alongside Dalek, there are 5 other stories that have 4.5 TARDISes out of 5. They are The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Caves of Androzani, and The Tomb of the Cybermen. That's it from me. Thanks guys for watching this Doctor Who review. Tell me what you think about Rose. Leave a comment down below. Do you like it? Leave a comment down below. Do you not like it? Leave a comment down below. And if you like this video, please like it and share it with the hashtag teamstructor. And if you like the channel as a whole, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out. General rule, a new video every Sunday at 4 PM GMT. So if you want to help support the channel, you can go and help us out by going to the Patreon at patreon.com/deanstructor. For as little as £1 a month, you can help support the channel. And there are 3 tiers you can go and join. So, if you want to find this and more, go to the Patreon at patreon.com/deanstructor. I am back on Sunday with a reaction from the Kidstructors. It is Melvin and Maureen's Musicograms, and hopefully I'll be able to join you then at 4 PM GMT. But until then guys, thanks very much for watching, and you know what? I will see you later.